Billionaire's Gamble, a love story that defied destiny. In the glimmering heart of New York, where the skyline shines with the promises of wealth and power, there lived a man named Alexander Cole. A self-made billionaire, Cole had everything one could ever dream of: money, prestige, and the freedom that only wealth could buy. Yet behind the polished veneer of his empire, a deep emptiness lingered. Alexander had everything except love, and he felt it. Every glass of champagne he clinked, every deal he signed, every luxury he indulged in, failed to fill the void that tugged at his heart. One fateful evening, while attending a gala hosted in one of his luxurious penthouses, he met her. Her name was Lily Rose, a woman who seemed out of place amidst the glitzy crowd. She wasn't a socialite, nor did she care for the fame that came with wealth. Lily had grown up in the humbling streets of Brooklyn, and despite her beauty and grace, she had learned to navigate life with resilience and independence. She wasn't looking for a billionaire. In fact, she had vowed never to be part of a world that was so shallow and disconnected from reality. Their paths crossed when Lily, a charity worker, was invited to the gala as part of a fundraiser. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air in the stifling atmosphere of luxury. Her laughter rang out like music, and her kindness was palpable even in a crowd of the elite. For Alexander, it was as though the world had suddenly paused. But Lily, unaffected by his wealth or status, was not interested in his advances. She saw through his fortune to the loneliness that lay beneath. She found his world superficial and detached from the struggles she faced daily in her charity work. Yet there was something about Alexander that intrigued her, and despite herself, she found herself agreeing to meet him again. Over the course of the next few weeks, Alexander pursued her relentlessly. He invited her to dinners, hosted private charity events, and even offered to donate millions to her cause. But Lily remained distant, aware of the fragile line between gratitude and exploitation. She didn't want to be just another conquest in the billionaire's collection. However, Alexander refused to give up. He realized that in her he found something he had been searching for all his life: authenticity. Her beauty was not just skin deep, it was her integrity, her compassion for others that drew him in. For the first time, he felt seen, not for his wealth, but for who he truly was. But the deeper he got involved with Lily, the more complicated things became. Alexander's closest business associate, Adam, had his own motives. Adam was envious of Alexander's success and had secretly been siphoning money from the company's accounts. When he realized that Alexander's newfound obsession with Lily might cause him to overlook the operations, Adam saw an opportunity. One night, while Alexander was away visiting Lily's charity project, Adam orchestrated a major scandal. He planted false evidence implicating Alexander in illegal business dealings. The media exploded with headlines, and the press painted Alexander as a corrupt billionaire. His world of luxury and success came crashing down. With his reputation in tatters and the threat of legal action looming, Alexander sought solace in Lily. But what he didn't expect was her reaction. Lily, though sympathetic, was now caught in a dilemma of her own. She had always wanted to keep her life separate from the complexities of wealth, and this scandal put everything in jeopardy. She feared that Alexander's world, filled with lies and deceit, would swallow her whole. She pushed him away, leaving him alone in his darkest hour. Heartbroken and betrayed, Alexander fought back. He used his resources and intelligence to clear his name, but as he took down those who had wronged him, he realized that he had lost something far more important: the woman who had shown him that love wasn't about money or status. It was about truth and connection. In the end, Alexander made a decision that would change the course of his life forever. He stepped away from his empire, choosing a life of humility and self-discovery. He reached out to Lily, not with wealth or promises, but with an apology and the hope that they could build something real together. Lily, moved by his transformation, met him halfway. She saw the man he had become, the man she had always believed he could be. Together, they embarked on a journey not defined by riches, but by love and the lessons they had learned through their tumultuous journey. Their story became legendary, not for the wealth they once had, but for the love they found when all else had failed. Alexander Cole, the billionaire who once had everything, found his greatest fortune not in the billions he had made, but in the woman who taught him how to love without conditions. As for Lily, she never saw herself as part of a fairy tale, but life, it seemed, had a way of writing its own endings, ones that no amount of money could ever buy. Titulo: Billionaire's Gamble, a love story that defied destiny. Parte 2. Narração. As the months passed, since Alexander's bold decision to walk away from his empire, the world that once seemed so grand and filled with promise now appeared smaller, quieter, and more uncertain. He had stripped himself of the luxuries, the mansions, and the endless parties. He no longer frequented the elite clubs or donned the custom-tailored suits that had once defined him. Instead, Alexander found peace in simpler places, living in a modest apartment near the city's heart, surrounded by books and old memories, questioning the path that had led him to this point. Yet despite his outward change, the pain of losing Lily still lingered in his heart. He spent his days trying to rebuild his reputation and clear his name from the scandal that had almost destroyed him. He was relentless, determined to prove to the world, and most importantly to himself, that he was not just the sum of his wealth. But Alexander knew that without Lily, none of it mattered. Lily, for her part, had been grappling with her own inner conflict. After the heartbreak of pushing Alexander away, she had returned to her charity work full-time, but she found herself increasingly restless. Despite her vow to stay away from the world of millionaires, Alexander's sacrifice haunted her. The memory of the man who had once seemed so cold and unreachable, now stripped of his riches and arrogance, clung to her thoughts. She had watched him transform, not for her, but for himself. And in doing so, he had shown her a side of him she had never imagined. She missed him, but Lily knew that love was never simple, especially when complicated by the scars of the past. She had made peace with the idea of being independent, of relying only on herself. She had no interest in falling for someone who had the power to break her heart all over again. Then one evening, as the crisp autumn air swept through the streets of New York, Lily received an unexpected message. It was from Alexander, and the subject line simply read, "We need to talk." The weight of the words sent a rush of emotions through her chest, but she hesitated. She had told herself she would not let him back in. That chapter was closed. Yet, something deep inside her urged her to listen. They met at a small cafe in the heart of the city, away from the prying eyes of the media. Alexander looked different, older, not in years but in experience. The once imposing figure now carried a humility that was hard to ignore. He was dressed casually in a simple shirt and jeans, but his eyes still held that same intensity, that same drive she had once admired. "I know I've hurt you," Alexander began, his voice steady but vulnerable. "I never meant to drag you into my world of corruption. But what I did to clear my name, it wasn't just for me. It was for us. I want to build something with you, something that's real. I've realized that without you, none of this matters." Lily's heart ached at his words, but she couldn't let herself fall too easily. "You've changed," she said quietly, her eyes studying him. "But why should I believe you? You were once a man who would do anything for power. What makes you different now?" Alexander took a deep breath, the weight of his past still heavy on his shoulders. "Because this time, I'm not asking for anything from you. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just want a chance to prove that I've learned, that I'm not the man I was before. I've made mistakes, and I'll make more, but I want you to know the truth. I want us to build something that has nothing to do with money, power, or status." Lily looked away for a moment, her fingers tapping nervously on the table. Her mind raced, torn between the man she had once loved and the man who had hurt her. She didn't want to go back to that place of uncertainty, but she couldn't deny the pull she still felt toward him. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Alexander," Lily admitted, her voice soft but firm. "You walked away from everything once, but can you truly leave it all behind? Can you live a life without all of that?" Alexander reached across the table, his hand trembling slightly as he took hers. "I've already left it behind. I'm not asking you to come back to a life of luxury. I'm asking you to build something with me from the ground up. A life that's real, that's ours. I don't need the power or the wealth anymore. What I need is you." The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable, and for the first time in months, Lily felt a spark of hope. She had always known that Alexander had the capacity for greatness, but it was a greatness rooted in love and integrity, not wealth or success. Still, her fears lingered. "And if this doesn't work?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander's gaze softened, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Then we'll try again. I'm not going anywhere. I've learned that life isn't about perfection. It's about the journey, the people you meet along the way, and the love you choose to give." Lily's heart swelled with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel for a long time. The walls she had so carefully built around herself were beginning to crumble, piece by piece. She knew there was still a long road ahead of them, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could walk it together. In the weeks that followed, Lily and Alexander embarked on a new chapter. They worked together on the charity she had founded, focusing on providing aid to the homeless and marginalized communities. Alexander used his resources not to dominate or control, but to empower and uplift those in need. Slowly, he began to rebuild the trust that had been broken. But their journey was far from easy. There were still obstacles, people from Alexander's past who sought to tear him down, whispers in the press about his sudden disappearance from the high society scene, and the lingering doubts in their hearts. But every challenge only served to strengthen their bond. Together they faced adversity, and with every hurdle their love grew stronger. Lily had once believed that true love couldn't exist in a world so driven by greed. But Alexander had shown her that love was not defined by wealth or status. It was defined by the choices you made, the sacrifices you were willing to endure, and the willingness to grow together. As they stood side by side, watching the sunset over the skyline, Alexander knew that the gamble he had taken had been worth it. He had risked everything for love, and in doing so, he had found something far greater than any fortune or title, a love that was real, a love that was theirs.